Alright, let me tell you about this one time I had the creepiest experience while gaming. So, I'm a pretty hardcore gamer. I usually spend my weekends glued to my computer playing whatever catches my interest. This happened a while back when I was really into this horror survival game. You know the type, right? Dark, eerie atmosphere, and lots of jump scares. It was the kind of game where you put on your headphones, turn off the lights, and just let yourself get completely absorbed into the world. So, it was a Friday night, and I had the whole place to myself. My roommates were out of town, and I was looking forward to a weekend of uninterrupted gaming. I ordered some takeout, set up my gaming station, and started playing around 8 p.m. The game was pretty intense, and I was so into it that I didn't even realize how late it was getting. The house was dead quiet, except for the occasional sound effects from the game and my own breathing. Around midnight, I got to this part in the game where you're exploring this abandoned hospital. The game designers really nailed the atmosphere. Creaking doors, flickering lights, the whole 9 yards. I was on edge, creeping through these dark hallways with only a dim flashlight to guide me. I remember hearing this faint, static-like sound in the game, like something was wrong with the audio. At first, I thought it was just part of the game's soundtrack, but it kept getting louder and more distorted. I paused the game for a second, took off my headphones, and listened. The sound was still there, but it wasn't coming from the game. It was this weird, faint buzzing noise, like a broken radio signal. I sat there for a minute, trying to figure out where it was coming from. It was faint, but it seemed to be coming from the other room, like through the walls or something. I told myself it was probably just some interference from a neighbor's TV or maybe a phone, but it definitely freaked me out a bit. I shook it off, put my headphones back on, and went back to the game. But now I couldn't really concentrate. Every few minutes, I'd hear that buzzing sound again, cutting through the game's audio. It was driving me crazy, so I finally decided to get up and check it out. I paused the game and went into the hallway, flipping on the lights as I went. The sound was louder in the hallway, more defined. It almost sounded like a voice, but garbled and robotic. It was definitely coming from the living room. I slowly walked in there, feeling this weird sense of dread creeping up on me. The living room was dark, except for this faint blue glow from the router. Nothing seemed out of place. I checked the TV, the stereo, even the router, but everything was off. The noise was still there though, like it was coming from the walls or maybe even from outside. I went to the front door and peeked through the peephole, but the street was empty. Just my car and a couple of streetlights flickering in the distance. I was about to turn back when I noticed something weird. Across the street, there was this guy just standing there, right under the streetlight. He wasn't moving or anything, just standing there, staring straight at my house. I couldn't make out his face, but he had this odd stance, like he was frozen or something. I stood there for a minute, just watching him, trying to figure out what the hell he was doing. My heart was pounding, but I kept telling myself it was probably just some random guy passing by or waiting for someone. But the longer I stared, the creepier it got. He didn't move, not even a twitch. I backed away from the door and went back to the living room, but the noise was gone now. It was just silent, almost too silent. I sat back down at my computer, trying to shake off the weird feeling. I put my headphones back on and started playing again, but I couldn't focus. My mind kept drifting back to that guy outside. After a few minutes, I decided to check the door again, just to make sure he was gone. I walked over, peeked through the peephole, and he was still there. Same spot, same stance, just standing there. Only this time, it looked like he was closer, like he'd taken a few steps towards the house. I felt a chill run down my spine. This was too much. I locked the door and double-checked all the windows. Back at my computer, I tried to get back into the game, but my heart wasn't in it anymore. I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting to see something or someone there. It was like this creeping paranoia had settled in. The room felt colder, the shadows longer. I finally decided to call it a night and shut everything down. But just as I was about to turn off my computer, the screen flickered. It was quick, almost like a glitch, but then it happened again and again. My desktop was glitching out, lines and pixels distorting the screen. And then, in the middle of the static, I saw it. A face, just for a split second, but it was there. Pale, expressionless, with dark eyes staring right at me. I jerked back, ripping off my headphones. What the hell was happening? I stared at the screen, but it was back to normal. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely think straight. I turned off the monitor, breathing heavily, trying to calm down. Maybe it was just my imagination, or maybe the game had messed with my head. I don't know. I just needed to get some sleep. I went to bed, but I couldn't shake off that feeling of being watched. Every little sound made me jump. The creaking of the house, the wind outside, it all felt amplified, like it was closing in on me. I must have lain there for hours, staring at the ceiling, too scared to close my eyes. Then, in the dead silence, I heard it again. That buzzing noise. It was faint, but it was there, creeping in from the hallway. I held my breath, listening. It was getting louder, more distinct. And then, I heard a click, like the sound of a door unlocking. My heart skipped a beat. I knew I had locked everything. I sat up in bed, straining to hear. There were footsteps now, slow and deliberate, coming from the hallway. My mind was racing. Was it the guy from outside? Had he somehow gotten in? I wanted to call the police, but my phone was on the desk across the room. I was frozen, too terrified to move. The footsteps stopped just outside my bedroom door. I could see the faint outline of light under the doorframe, and then a shadow passed by. My breath caught in my throat. Someone was there, right outside my room. I wanted to scream, to do something, but I was paralyzed with fear. After what felt like an eternity, the shadow moved away, and the footsteps retreated down the hall. I listened as they faded into silence. I waited for what must have been another hour before I finally got the courage to move. I grabbed my phone, but the battery was dead. Great. I had to check the house, make sure it was empty. I crept out of bed, my legs shaky, and slowly opened the door. The hallway was empty, just the dim glow from the nightlight at the end. I checked every room, every closet, but there was no one there. The front door was still locked, and the windows were all shut tight. I went back to my room, still shaking, and sat on the bed, trying to make sense of it all. Had I imagined it? Was I just so freaked out by the game that my mind played tricks on me? I don't know, but I couldn't stay in that house another minute. I packed a bag and left, went to a friend's place for the night. The next day, I came back with my friend to check the place out in the daylight. Everything was just as I left it, except for one thing. On my computer desk, there was a note, just a small piece of paper with a single sentence written on it. I saw you. No signature, nothing else, just those 3 words. We called the cops, but there wasn't much they could do. No signs of forced entry, no fingerprints, nothing. They said it was probably just a prank, or maybe I had left the note myself and forgot, but I know I didn't. Someone had been in my house that night, and they had been watching me. I never figured out who it was or why they did it. I moved out not long after that. I still game, but not like I used to. I always make sure the doors are locked, and I never play horror games alone in the dark anymore. Every now and then, I think I hear that buzzing noise, just at the edge of my hearing. It sends a chill down my spine every time. So this one night, I was home alone, and all I wanted was to unwind with some gaming. You know how it is after a long day? You just want to escape into a virtual world and forget about everything else. I was really into this new horror game that had just come out, the kind where you play alone in the dark to get the full experience. I've been looking forward to this all week, so I had everything set up. Headphones on, lights off, snacks within reach. I was ready. The game started out like any other, setting up a creepy atmosphere with dark hallways, strange noises, and all that jazz. I was totally engrossed in it, creeping around in the game, flashlight flickering and all. It was the kind of game that gets under your skin, makes you jump at every little sound. But that was the fun of it, right? Getting spooked out of your mind while knowing it's all just pixels on a screen. But then something weird started happening. I was exploring this abandoned building in the game, checking every room for clues. The game's sound design was top-notch. You could hear every creak and whisper, really putting you on edge. I was so into it that when I heard this faint knocking sound, I just assumed it was coming from the game. I ignored it at first, thinking it was just part of the ambiance, but it kept happening. Knock, knock, knock. It was slow, steady, like someone tapping their knuckles on a wooden door. I paused the game to take a break and catch my breath. That's when I realized the knocking wasn't coming from my headphones. It was coming from the hallway outside my room. My heart skipped a beat. I live alone, and it was almost midnight. Who would be knocking on my door at this hour? I sat there for a moment, frozen, listening. Maybe it was just the neighbors, I thought. Thin walls. You know how it is in apartments. But then it happened again. Knock, knock, knock. This time it was louder, more insistent, like it was right on the other side of my door. I took off my headphones and listened carefully. The room was dead silent except for that knocking sound. I got up slowly, trying not to make any noise. My mind was racing with all sorts of possibilities, none of them good. Maybe it was someone messing with me, maybe a friend trying to scare me, but none of my friends lived close enough to just drop by like that. I crept towards the door, every instinct in me screaming to stay put, to not open it. But curiosity got the better of me. I reached the door and pressed my ear against it, holding my breath. The knocking stopped. I stood there for what felt like forever, just waiting, listening. Nothing. I was about to step back when the knocking started again, this time right at ear level. I jumped back, nearly tripping over my chair, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know what to do. Call the cops? But what would I say? That someone was knocking on my door? It wasn't exactly an emergency, so I just stood there, staring at the door, waiting for something to happen. After a minute or so, the knocking stopped again, and everything went quiet. I waited a bit longer, but there were no more sounds, no more knocking, just silence. I finally worked up the nerve to open the door, half expecting someone to jump out at me. But when I opened it, there was nothing. The hallway was empty, the lights dimmed as usual. I peeked out, looking both ways, but there was no one there. It was like whoever, or whatever, had been knocking just vanished into thin air. I closed the door and locked it, feeling this weird mix of relief and unease. Maybe it was just some prank, I told myself, trying to shake off the creepy feeling. I went back to my game, but I couldn't focus. My mind kept going back to that knocking. It sounded so real, so deliberate, like someone was trying to get my attention. I decided to call it a night and shut down the game. As I was getting ready for bed, I heard it again. Knock, knock, knock. This time it was fainter, like it was coming from farther away. My heart started racing again. It wasn't coming from my door anymore. It sounded like it was coming from inside my apartment. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, scanning the room. There was nothing out of place, no sign of anyone else being there. I checked the closet, the bathroom, every corner, but it was just me, alone. I went to the living room, looking around, trying to find the source of the noise. Everything was exactly where it should be. I was starting to think I was losing it, hearing things that weren't there. But then it happened again, louder this time, like it was coming from the walls themselves. Knock, knock, knock. I backed up against the wall, trying to stay calm, but my mind was racing. What the hell was going on? I decided to leave. I didn't care if it was some prank, or if I was just losing my mind. I wasn't sticking around to find out. I grabbed my keys and phone and headed for the door. As I opened it, I heard the knocking again, right behind me, so close I could feel the vibrations through the floor. I ran out of the apartment and down the stairs, not stopping until I was outside in the cold night air. I stood there for a while, trying to catch my breath, my mind spinning with all sorts of explanations. Was it a neighbor messing with me? But it sounded like it was coming from inside my apartment. I spent the night at a friend's place, not wanting to go back until I had some idea of what was going on. The next day, I returned with a couple of friends to check things out. We searched the entire apartment, looking for any sign of a prank or a break-in, but there was nothing. No hidden speakers, no way for someone to get in without me knowing. It was like whatever had happened was all in my head. I still don't know what it was. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me, but it felt so real, like someone or something was trying to get my attention, trying to make me open that door. I haven't had any other experiences like that since, but I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched, especially when I'm alone at night. I've talked to a few people about it, and most of them just laugh it off, saying it was probably just a prank or my imagination. But I know what I heard, and I know how it made me feel. It's the kind of thing that sticks with you, makes you second guess every little noise, every creak of the floorboards. I still game, but I don't play horror games alone at night anymore. I keep a light on, and I make sure all the doors are locked. Maybe it was nothing, just a weird coincidence or a figment of my imagination. But sometimes, when I'm sitting there in the dark, I swear I can still hear it. Knock, knock, knock. Alright, so let me tell you about this one night that completely messed with my head. I'm a gamer, right? I spend most of my free time in front of my PC, headset on, lost in whatever game I'm obsessed with at the moment. Usually it's nothing but fun and a great way to unwind. But this one night, it was different. I had just picked up a new horror game everyone was talking about. You know the kind, lots of jump scares, creepy atmosphere, the works. It was a Friday night and I had the whole place to myself. My roommate was out for the weekend, so I figured it was the perfect time to dive into the game without any interruptions. I grabbed some snacks, dimmed the lights, and settled into my chair, ready to get into it. The game started off pretty slow, setting up the story and all. I was exploring this abandoned building, and it had that classic horror vibe. Flickering lights, strange noises, shadows moving just out of sight. I was already on edge, but in a good way, you know? That kind of thrill you get when you're playing a scary game alone in the dark. I was completely absorbed, headphones on, eyes glued to the screen. About an hour in, I started to notice something weird. Every now and then, I'd hear this faint noise, like a soft tapping sound. At first I thought it was part of the game, but it didn't quite fit with what was happening on the screen. It was too real, like it was coming from somewhere in the room. I paused the game, pulled off my headset, and listened. Silence. Nothing but the hum of my PC. I shrugged it off, thinking maybe it was just my imagination or some noise from outside. I put the headset back on and kept playing, but then it happened again. This time it was louder, like someone was tapping on the window behind me. I paused the game again and turned around, but there was nothing there. The blinds were drawn and I couldn't see outside, but it didn't look like anyone was there, just darkness. I started to feel that weird prickling sensation on the back of my neck, like I was being watched. I told myself I was just being paranoid, that it was the game messing with my head, but the feeling wouldn't go away. I tried to focus on the game again, but I couldn't shake the unease. Every few minutes I'd hear that tapping noise, sometimes softer, sometimes louder, like it was getting closer. I decided to take a break, maybe grab a drink and clear my head. I went to the kitchen, leaving the game paused on the screen. As I was pouring a glass of water, I glanced over at the window and felt a chill run down my spine. The blinds were still closed, but I could have sworn I saw a shadow move behind them. I froze, staring at the window, waiting to see if it would happen again. Nothing, just the stillness of the night outside. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down. It was probably just my mind playing tricks on me, right? I was already on edge from the game, so it made sense. I finished my water and headed back to my room, trying to convince myself that everything was fine. But as I walked down the hallway, I heard the tapping again. This time, it wasn't coming from the window. It was coming from my room. I stopped in my tracks, my heart pounding in my chest. I stood there, listening, trying to pinpoint the sound. It was faint, like someone gently tapping on my desk or my monitor. I had no idea what was going on, but I wasn't about to just stand there and do nothing. I took a deep breath, steeled myself, and walked into the room. Everything looked the same as I left it. The game was still paused on the screen. My chair was where I left it, nothing out of place. But that feeling of being watched was stronger now, like there was someone or something in the room with me. I looked around, checking every corner, even under the desk. Nothing. I sat back down, trying to get my head back in the game. Literally. I put the headset back on, unpaused the game, and kept playing, though I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The game was getting more intense, and so was the tapping. It was almost like it was trying to match the rhythm of my heartbeat, getting faster and louder with every minute. I was at this point in the game where you have to make your way through this maze-like basement, and it was dead silent except for the sound of my character's footsteps. Then, out of nowhere, my screen went black. I thought it was part of the game at first, but then I realized the monitor had actually turned off. I tried to turn it back on, but it wouldn't respond. Suddenly, I heard that tapping noise again. this time right in my ear. I yanked off my headset and jumped out of my chair, looking around the room. My heart was racing, and I felt this wave of panic wash over me. I didn't know what was happening, but I knew I didn't want to be in that room anymore. I grabbed my phone and bolted out of there, heading straight for the living room. I sat on the couch, trying to calm down and make sense of everything. I was too freaked out to go back into my room, so I decided to just stay in the living room and maybe watch some TV to distract myself. I turned on the TV, but it wouldn't power up. Great, just great. Everything was going haywire at the same time. I pulled out my phone to try and call a friend, maybe have them come over and help me figure this out. But when I unlocked my phone, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There was a new notification, a message from an unknown number. It was just one word. Look. I stared at the message, trying to wrap my head around it. Look at what? I started to feel this rising sense of dread, like something terrible was about to happen. I slowly turned my head to look around the room, and that's when I saw it. In the reflection of the dark TV screen, there was a figure standing behind me. It was just a shadowy silhouette, no features, but it was there, standing in the doorway to the hallway. I whipped around, but there was nothing there. Just the empty hallway leading back to my room. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. I didn't know what to do. I grabbed my phone, ready to call the police or anyone, but then I saw another message pop up on the screen. This one was a picture. I hesitated for a moment, my thumb hovering over the notification. Then I opened it. It was a photo of my room, taken from the doorway. In the picture, you could see my desk, my monitor, and my chair. And sitting in the chair, staring straight at the camera, was me. It was like someone had taken a picture of me from behind while I was sitting there playing the game. But I had been alone the whole time. I dropped the phone, my mind racing, trying to make sense of it all. How was that possible? Who took that picture? I looked back at the hallway, half expecting to see that shadowy figure again, but there was nothing. Just the empty darkness. I couldn't stay in that house any longer. I grabbed my keys, threw on my shoes, and got out of there as fast as I could. I drove around for a while, not really knowing where I was going, just trying to get away from whatever was in my house. Eventually, I ended up at a friend's place. I told them everything that happened, but they just looked at me like I was crazy. I guess I couldn't blame them. I didn't go back to my house until the next day, and when I did, everything was back to normal. My monitor worked, my phone didn't have any weird messages on it, and there was no sign of anything out of the ordinary. It was like it never happened, but I know it did. I can't explain it, and I don't know what it was, but something was there that night. Since then, I haven't been able to play games alone in the dark. I always keep the lights on, and I make sure to check behind me every now and then, just to be sure. It's been a while, and nothing like that has happened again, but sometimes, when I'm alone and everything is quiet, I think I can still hear that tapping, and every time I do, I get that same feeling, like I'm being watched, like someone or something is still there, just waiting for the right moment to show itself again.